everybody. But we're also on tape. We're deeper down in the bowels of this music. Episode 90 of Kamloops last week. Christopher Foles, Greg the engineer, Bennett, Magic Mike, and Bill. 90.
90, interesting. 90 is the age at which Florence Nightingale died. Florence Nightingale, of course, is the world's best known nurse. And it just so happens that May 8th to 14th is National Nursing Week. So it's kind of
And we're having
synergies
Interior
there.
Health's medical health officer on
Who's
today.
a doctor who works with nurses, probably. Yes, there
we
you
go.
go. See, the circle is complete.
90?
90 for me. I can only think of that's when I started high school. And that
That's when you
was
graduated high school.
94. Yeah,
No, you
2002.
graduated
So were you president of the AV club from the jump? Like you walked into the school and
I absolutely was. Yeah, absolutely. I was doing all sorts of different stuff with the gym team. That was how I got out of gym class, actually, fittingly enough.
Juggling VHS tapes and
I had the
everything, yeah.
fastest rewinding VHS tapes in the industry. Toshiba made them. Yeah.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
what was on those tapes is a different story.
Well, a lot of furry stuff.
A lot of
probably.
furry costumes.
Absolutely.
That's where it
question.
started. Yeah.
Okay, great show today. Dr. Carol Fenton.
Yes, she's the Kamloops-based medical health officer for Interior Health. She'll be on the show today. We're happy she's coming because she's very busy, and she's going to be talking all things decriminalization, proposed bylaw, and drug use in the open, and why it may or may not be a good idea to have bylaws.
In full disclosure, we already taped that interview, and you ran a little hot as you do. So stay
We had a
tuned.
good conversation.
It was a good conversation.
conversation,
You didn't run hot. Good conversation, and she answered some questions, some tough questions. So stay tuned for that. It's good. We also filmed already Jody Vosper. He's the AD, athletic director at Sa-Hali, and Annemarie Watts. She's at Valleyview. They're getting prestigious awards from BC School of Sports. So we wanted to just do a feel-good, recognize some volunteer-type people, and give them some spotlight. So we're doing that. It also just happens to coincide with Kaleigh Gnoato. She's a grade 10 student from Valleyview Secondary who reached out to us, advocating at a young age. She's upset because there's a chance that gymnastics, which she loves, will be stripped from BC School Sports, but it won't be a BC School Sports thing anymore.
Yep.
It just so happened that Annemarie and Jody, they have kind of differing opinions.
Yes.
The BC School Sports more side of things, which worked out great because Kaleigh has a different take on things.
Absolutely.
Did you guys do gymnastics in high school?
Yes.
You did
The
gymnastics?
springboards and the
Well, I mean,
ropey
in
things.
in gym class, you'd run and jump onto the big mats, and then you'd try to climb the rings. And
The rope. Remember the rope?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
rope.
Did you guys do the rope?
Oh, the rope always had that tingly feeling in your stomach there as you came down. It's a little.
I never got up, so I don't know what the tingly feeling was going down.
I think furry times 100. But and also the is it called the pommel horse, where where you have to vault over?
Oh, yeah.
That
I don't
was
think
all
they
fun.
can do those things anymore.
Well,
I think the rope's out. You can't have kids climbing up the rope.
Everything's out because of this litigious society we're in.
Yeah. What else is going on? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, so we're taping this on Wednesday, May 3rd, and last night, May 2nd, I saw Greg the engineer leaving the Kamloops Blazers game. I got a ticket and I went to see the game, and Greg the engineer got a last-minute ticket, and we ran into each other after the game. It was a fantastic game.
Yeah.
You did a story on there. I was retweeting your tweets.
Yeah.
Get a lot of followers, and it was magical in there. It was Magical Mike in there.
Magical Mike.
It was so alive, and the Blazers played hard. And I've seen Seattle for the first time last night, and I can't believe how good that team is. Their forecheck is unreal, and if Kamloops beats them this series, it'll be really, really some kind of thing. Because even though Kamloops won 4-1 and they outplayed them, outshot them, Seattle impressed the hell out of me.
I was a little bit worried. I was not panicked as I tweeted before the game. I thought the Blazers were in a good spot. They got better. Game 1 was not a good game for them.
Game two was
Game 2,
good.
they were very good. They should have won.
Yep.
They needed big goals and big saves at big times. They didn't get them.
No.
Well, they got him last. Mike, you love talking about hockey.
Yeah.
don't
Oh, I
you?
love hockey.
Dylan Ernst was amazing.
Dylan Ernst stole a show last night, and he's such a cool story because 18-year-old year, unproven. Here's the keys to a Memorial Cup team.
Following
to
a
the crease.
legend.
Following a legend, Dylan Garand. So much pressure on him, and he had his iconic moment last night.
Yep.
One of them, hopefully there's more for him in the playoffs, but you could just tell. I mean, that had to be for his family watching that too. The save, Greg, the
save,
puck
it
comes
was-
back
comes
over.
back.
That was an iconic save, for sure. Let's start there. You know what I'm talking about. So what did you see? What did you just have to feel?
Yeah, they shot it right off my toe, and I think it hit the stanchion of the boards. I wasn't too sure where it was. Hit off the crossbar, and I felt it hit my back, and got lucky when I swung my hand around and caught it.
So did you know that it didn't go for sure over the goal line, or did you just make sure you pretended till the refs thought it? Did you hold the glove up? I got it.
Honestly, I wasn't too sure if I was over the goal line or not. I was hoping, but obviously I wasn't, so it was good.
So you have Ernie from Sesame Street on the back of your mask. So you actually have eyes in the back of your head. Was he telling you where to put your glove maybe and pinch that one back there?
Yeah, for sure he was, yeah.
Okay, what's it like to have the crowd chanting, whose house? Ern's house?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, honestly. Didn't hear much last year, obviously. Didn't play too much, but I think the team helped me out a lot today and really helped my game, so it was awesome.
But he had saved it with his back, and he made that turn, a gymnastics turn he made, and he saved that. He saved that thing.
Gymnastics.
Had they not had gymnastics in school, he wouldn't have saved that. So there's an argument to keeping it. It was very, very good. What a game! Game four is on Thursday, May 4th, which is tomorrow. And if the Blazers tie it up, it's a series, boy.
Yeah. But we were busy last weekend, Mike. Mm-hmm. Chris, you and I, we were busy. What were we doing?
Well, what was happening in town there? That big try your lawn bowling for free 2-day thing we had in the paper. Every time we put in the paper, hundreds of people come out. And we went down there to try lawn bowling for the first time. We thought it'd be easier, but then because the ball has a bias on it and it's wobbly.
It kind of reminded me actually of the VW turtle race, right? Because you send down your turtle down the river.
Never know what's going to happen.
From Volkswagen, the Magic Mirror is brought to you by Volkswagen. But Mike, as you do, you got a little carried away, didn't you? And you started windmilling the ball. And
wow. I watched too much Happy Gilmore as a kid, so I thought maybe I can make up with strength what I didn't have in strategy, and yeah, that didn't go over so well. But thankfully, at the end, in the back end, unlike Dylan Armstrong, who likes to throw things really far, there were Sa-Hali mattresses, which caught
the ball
from Gord's Appliance and Mattress Center
without hurting anybody or anything like that. But yeah, that strategy of just really winging it didn't really go that well.
Especially in lawn bowling. And by the way, Gord's, they service what they sell, don't they, Chris?
Yes, they do, absolutely. Yeah, because when we were there and we wanted to have a beverage because it was a hot day, their fridge broke down right in the middle of the Try It free lawn bowling days at Riverside Park.
How can you have lawn bowling without a pop fridge?
So you got on the horn, and who'd you call?
Gord's.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, they came and fixed it.
That's right, and they took part in the bowling.
The lawn bowling, yeah.
Absolutely.
But once again, Chris, because you have a bit of a mean streak in you, you took one of the lawn bowls again and you threw it up against the glass. And it wouldn't shatter because it's the same glass that they use at the Y Dream Home.
That's right, you can't break it.
It's top of the line. The Kamloops Y Dream Home Lottery. You can still get your tickets.
Yes, that's right.
And that home out there in Juniper, it's at 2197 Coldwater Drive in Juniper West. 2,407 square foot modern mountain home with stunning valley views.
Yes.
Perfect place to hang all your guitars. Recording studio in the basement.
And enough room in the backyard to practice some lawn bowling.
And also, don't forget about this. We were so happy, but only time we're going to be happier, it's next Wednesday for McHappy Day.
That's right.
At McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
May 10th. May 10th.
May 10th at McDonald's.
Yep.
Let's move on now to Above the Folds. It's brought to you by Gord's Appliance and Mattress Center. We have Dr. Carol Fenton on the show.
Don't want the 9-hour cycle, please.
Freaking $500 hydro bill, piece of trash.
I need to speak to Gord on the 9er.
Hey, no, I'm actually Steve, the new owner.
First things first, pal, you should probably update your sign. Number 2, my dishwasher is tangled again. The 9-hour cycle, hydro bill through the roof. You guys don't fix appliances, I know that, so I need a new one.
We actually do fix appliances, but if you want, I can show you some new ones first and have a look. You got a price in mind?
Money's not an obstacle for me.
Money's definitely an obstacle. He's the cheapest guy in Kamloops. Ain't that right, Darby?
Well, this here is going to be your Cadillac model, top of the line. This is our middle of the road dishwasher, just a great dishwasher at a great price. This is our budget friendly model, still a great dishwasher, just at a bit of a lower price.
Price doesn't work for me. Let's see if you can fix mine at home.
Alrighty then. There you go, seems to be good. How's the fridge working?
The fridge is fine, Gord.
It's Steve.
welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You biked here.
Let's
did. Start there. How often do you bike? Is that your regular mode of transportation?
That is my regular mode of transportation. I do share a car with my spouse.
What are your thoughts on bike lanes in the city?
I would like more of them.
Okay. Chris?
We're building a big one down 6th Avenue right now, and the Exum Trail going up to Sa-Hali is a great thing.
Yeah, Kamloops has a great plan. I'm looking forward to seeing it fully implemented.
They were just behind, but I think they're catching up, and they just increased the funding by double to accelerate it. So that's good for you guys.
I love the one from, what is it, the Exum
Trail.
That one going all the way up.
It's really cool.
Because I live on Summit.
And then from there further up there, it's a good thing. So we have Dr. Carol Fenton here. You are the medical health officer based in Kamloops for Interior Health. And right now in the news, of course, is the and it's from Victoria. BC United is badgering the NDP over this issue. It's about whether municipalities and some desire, including Kamloops, to put some restrictions on the use of drugs in public with respect to the 3-year pilot project of decriminalization, which started in January 31st of this year and goes until, I think, 26. You have said that it's probably not the greatest idea, so we wanted to get you in here to talk about that to the layman, about why, maybe what the city is trying to do with the problem we all see, what you would rather have them see, and then we can go into it from there.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of concerns from across the province and particularly in Kamloops around public substance consumption and around general public disorder and general feelings of feeling unsafe. And so it's perfectly normal to want to do something about that. I'm just not convinced that this bylaw is the solution to that.
Okay.
And so why don't we take a step backwards and talk about decriminalization?
Sure, let's explain that to
and sort of writ large. Like, what is the purpose? Why are we doing this? What is the evidence? What do we know? And so I brought a diagram.
Can we get that zoomed in?
No, I can put it up later.
You put it up there?
I'll put it up later.
Okay, so this is called the prohibition paradox, or on this one's called the paradox of prohibition. And what we have here is on the y-axis, we have health and social problems. So like a lot of the things that we are seeing in Kamloops and across the province. And then on the x-axis, we have prohibition with a regulated public health market in the middle. And then we have full legalization with no restrictions.
Right.
And so what we see is a U-shaped curve where the health and social harms are highest in the fully illegal market as well as the fully unregulated corporate market. Right. And we can see we have different substances that fall along here. So fully prohibited are things like heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, while we have implemented a pilot of decriminalization. These substances are still illegal and not regulated. Right. On the all the way on the other side, we've got tobacco and alcohol. There is some regulations, but for the most part, it is a free market legal substance. For example, we are seeing alcohol in the grocery store, and we can buy tobacco at most
pharmacies,
gas stations, and things. And then in the middle, we have here cannabis. And so when cannabis was legalized in 2017, it was an opportunity to really look at what are all of the tools we have from a public health perspective to minimize the harms and maximize the benefits for people. And that's why we have things like restrictions on where you can sell cannabis, restrictions on density of outlets for cannabis, very strict labeling requirements so that you know exactly what you're buying, what the concentration is, what the product is, where it is from. There's advice on how to use it safely, and then things like restriction on advertising and plain packaging, and like you can't see it through the windows, for example. And not all of those are perfect. It is, there is some controversy, and it is easier to lighten up on the restrictions than it is to put new restrictions in place. As you have seen with tobacco and alcohol, it's been a long battle to really communicate the health harms of alcohol and denormalize it a little bit, as well as trying to decrease tobacco use, and specifically for youth.
Yes.
And so that's sort of, those are all of the policies we have in our toolkit. So from a public health perspective, I want all of the substances to be at the lowest harm point.
Right.
And what we're seeing under prohibition is exactly what we saw in the early 1920s under alcohol prohibition, where with enforcement cracking down on alcohol production, the easiest thing to produce and sell and not get caught were the higher concentration things. So that's where we had moonshine that would, disable people and kill people, and it wasn't a safe thing. You didn't know what concentration you were getting, and so on and so forth. And so alcohol is an interesting case example, because we have experienced what it was like under the illegal market when we were under prohibition, and we saw really high concentration. There was no labeling, there was very little safety, and we've swung, in my opinion, a little bit too far in the other direction, where you may have seen Health Canada came out with new recommendations around, again, minimizing the health impacts, and it was a shock to most people.
Well, basically they say don't drink, you're going to die.
The low-risk guidelines do allow for some consumption, but the whole thing is around informed consent.
Yes,
so
sure.
if you choose to drink, you know what risks you're taking on.
Makes sense.
And you're free to choose, but you need to know what those risks are, because a lot of people don't know, and alcohol is so normalized. And there are, public health regulations that we do have in place, things like minimum pricing, hours of sale. I notice you can buy a beer at the Kamloops Blazers game, but you notice it is beer, which is a lower concentration product than a hard liquor, for example.
You can also buy hard liquor there too.
Oh, can you?
I had a vodka tonic last night.
Interesting.
That's right. Yes, you can do that. But most people buy the beer because it's easy and it's a social thing.
And if we were seeing harms, it would be a choice that the retailers or the stadium could choose to ensure to choose lower concentrations.
They've made changes there with respect to not with the concentrations, but with respect to usage. They stopped the in and out privileges. They saw that people might be going out and binging a bit or whatever. But let's get back to this bylaw though in Kamloops, because what I want to ask you, just one thing is decriminalization is a federal provincial initiative, and when it came with restrictions. You can't go on to playgrounds. It doesn't apply to people 17 and under, and as I understand it, Kamloops first wanted to. I know it's been narrowed down, but the main thing was no parks. So what would be the problem of just adding one more restriction to a decriminalization law that already had restrictions on it, right? It's not, and they're not saying let's go find these people. They're just saying, can you please not use it here, not in the playground. It's already not in the playgrounds. And decrim itself was a de facto legal. We have had de facto decriminalization for the last 3 years. If you talk to the cops, they haven't been taking people's drugs. It's almost been like they're just codifying what was already been normalized on the streets. So I guess the question is, what would be the problem? It already has restrictions. Ottawa put restrictions on it. What would be the problem with saying, municipalities saying, we agree with decriminalization, maybe even getting away from prohibition, but just we don't want you doing drugs in the parks where the kids can see it. What's the problem with that? That's a layman's answer, question.
Yeah, of course. And from my perspective, we have to back up and say, why would someone use in the park? And for substances like cannabis and alcohol and tobacco, we have places where people can go and appropriately use, often with other people. And most often it's in a place like a restaurant or a smoking pit or a beer gardens, or at your house with friends over, or at someone else's house with friends over. And so who are the people who are using in the park, and what can we do, what are the options available to us to address the reason that they're using in the park, and looking at each of those options, what are the benefits and the harms, right? So the people who are most likely to use in the park are the youth. The prohibition already exempts them, it doesn't apply to them, so no need to do anything else there. The other groups are people who are houseless, for example. They don't have a home. They may not have the financial means to go to, appropriate place. Well, we don't have appropriate legal places. But if they don't have their own house, and they can't use in the shelter, if they're able to stay in a shelter, that leaves the park. And so criminalizing them specifically really perpetuates harms and doesn't address the underlying issue. So we could issue them a fine, we could tell them to move, they're just going to go somewhere else. Does that solve the problem?
Well, solve the problem from the parks, unless the kids play without seeing that stuff, and that's what some people would say. They say they know they're going to use it. We know they're going to use it. It's almost a lost cause. It's only getting worse since since fentanyl hit the market. Nothing that has happened, has been put in place by any authority, health or political, has helped. It's only getting worse. So we know it's basically a shit show out there. So why can't we say, we know this is the norm. I think it's the norm. It's really not getting better. So why not say, you can use, but please don't use it in parks and playgrounds, around the schools, so we have some kind of place where people can go without being subjected to that. That's, I think, what they're saying.
So exactly. I'm not saying that I support the status quo.
Yeah.
I'm saying let's look at all of the options on the table. Let's look at the benefits and risks of each option and make sure that we're not inflicting harm on someone. For example, if they don't have the ability to go to somewhere appropriate to use, like a supervised consumption. Most of our supervised consumption are injection only, which doesn't suit most people who use drugs, as well as most people dying from drug use. And they're only available during bankers' hours, which would not make sense for an alcohol establishment. Why would it make sense for this? So I think it's really important to have a broad conversation around what are our options, what is needed. We need to talk to the people who are most likely to be affected, being, why are we seeing this behavior, and how could we support you to do something safer so that we can change this behavior without potentially harming?
What about enforcement? It's a tricky issue. What's your take on it?
It's one of the four pillars. And Bob Hughes from Ask Wellness Society and others have said that because of the public health crisis, which was in April 2016, he argues that the powers that be have ignored that one pillar, which he said is important.
So there are different ways of looking at the enforcement pillar. Again, this is the four pillars framework is a 20-year-old framework, and you could argue that under that framework we have seen a worsening of the situation rather than an improvement. So it might be worth looking at whether or not that framework even makes sense. Or we look at what each pillar means and what's within the pillar. For me, appropriate enforcement would look like things like safe supply. Like, how do we know that what people are getting is safe? And then once they have safe supply, are they using appropriately in places where they should? Exactly like we enforce alcohol or tobacco currently. The risk of enforcement, specifically criminalization, is that, again, what we saw under alcohol prohibition drives the product on the market to be more and more concentrated, more and more dangerous. And that's why we're seeing 6 people die a day in this province from toxic drug poisoning. And the vast majority of people who are dying are they're dying in private living establishments, and the biggest demographic group are actually men of working age who work in the trades.
That's right.
And so one of the really, really important features of decriminalization is making it safe for that person to use supervised consumption or to seek addiction treatment without the fear of the stigma, without the fear of losing their job, without the fear of going to jail, because that's really, really important.
Sure it is. You mentioned yourself and other health officials have said that you'd like to see more places where people can go and use the drugs safely under supervision, supervised drug use sites, because from a safety perspective. Decriminalization was brought in partly to, like you say, remove the stigma, saying, look, if you need help, go get it. Would it not be wiser, and rather, or in addition to that, wouldn't it also be good to say, offer more recovery and rehab, like really ramp that up? So wouldn't the goal be to get the person on the street who is addicted to drugs and their life is misery, rather than say, well, you need a better place to use your stuff? I know, because you need to use when you're addicted. Wouldn't it be better to get them off it? Isn't that the ultimate goal, is to get people off the addiction?
I mean, it is a perennial debate in the area.
You don't
of
think the ultimate goal should be to
substance
get someone off it if they're living on the street in squalor? They're just existing?
So I think the ultimate goal would be to achieve their health goals, and that usually means getting and keeping housing,
Yes.
getting and keeping their health at a high level, and really developing healthy coping skills, healthy relationships, and being a contributing member of society, regardless of whether or not they have to take a medication every day. And so the idea that it's an all or nothing abstinence or failure approach can actually set people up for failure and actually increase the likelihood that they may be poisoned by the street supply, because if they're trying to avoid substances and they decrease their tolerance, and then they have a life event that's really stressful for them, or they have a relapse in their pain disorder, and they use the street supply to cope with that, and then they're at higher risk of dying because they've lost that tolerance. And so we need to respect every individual's goals and support them in their health journey without requiring things of them necessarily.
Now, David Eby, the Premier, who used to be the legal head of Pivot Legal Society and was considered a radical back in the day because he was against things like mandatory treatment and cracking down. He's done a 180, and he said when he sees the downtown east side and other parts of the province, he said he would consider looking at mandatory treatment or mandatory admission for mental health issues, because what he sees on the streets is shocking. What I see on the streets is shocking. What everyone sees is shocking. What do you think about saving someone from themselves and from society as opposed to civil liberties? I guess the question is
some form of mandatory treatment.
Mandatory treatment, not just treatment for addiction issues, but even for mental health issues or life trauma. If a person can't cope and they don't have the capacity to make the decision, shouldn't society step in and for their safety and our safety say, your life is not good on the street, on the riverbank, let's put you in a place? No?
So the conversation around mandatory treatment, I think, doesn't make sense when we don't have the conditions in place for that person to become stable, either before that is considered or after they are discharged from a facility like that. If they don't have access to affordable housing, if they don't have access to the treatment for whatever they need, be it cancer treatment, be it mental health treatment, be it addiction treatment, be it chronic pain, if all of those things aren't in place, it's going to be a bit of a revolving door, similar to what we see in our prison system, where yes, we take them off the street for a while, but then how are we fixing the problem that led to them being there? And so, it may be appealing because then we would have people at least sheltered for a while, but until we address the housing crisis, until we make healthy choices accessible to people, not only are we considering infringing on their human rights, it doesn't solve the problem.
And that's the criticism of the decriminalization program, though. Kevin Falcon and other politicians have said it's all well and good, but the powers that be, the Liberal Federals and the Federal Liberals and the provincial NDP, have not put in steps like that, rehab, help, therapy before this happens. If Portland, Oregon has 1 year of decriminalization under its belt, similar to ours, and overdose deaths have spiked 39% in 1 year. And they point to that and say, is this really going to work? I don't know. And I know that the health authority has said, hey, wait 6 months, cities, before you do any bylaws. What are we going to learn in 6 months that we haven't learned in 3 months? It hasn't impacted one bit, overdose deaths. They've only continued to rise. So is there another way that we should have introduced decriminalization, like you say, with the safety nets before, because we need a lot, right?
So I'm a very strong advocate of the safety nets, and I will always advocate for more strengthening of that. You will notice in the coroner's death review panel report that came out last year, strongly recommended evidence-based continuum of care for all the way from outpatient to inpatient, and we need, it needs to be a network, and it needs to be accessible everywhere. Absolutely, I support that 100%. The reason that I still support decriminalization is that I don't expect it will probably change much in terms of substance use behavior, because again, we're not addressing the reasons that people use. We have not expanded the places people can go to use. And given all of the discourse that we have seen, the stigma is very strong. So if you or I had a colleague that worked in the trades, I don't think they would be any more likely today than they were 3 months ago disclosing that they use. And so I would not expect in this period of time to see a difference. But the utility of waiting before passing a bylaw is, if it hasn't changed, then why a bylaw now as opposed to a year ago, right? Are we doing this bylaw in response to decriminalization, or what are we trying to achieve? And that's why I think it's really important to be, what are we trying to solve? What is the problem we are trying to solve? What are the upstream factors for that? Is it housing? Is it access to care? Is it supervised consumption access? Or is it literally all of those things in place, but people are just not?
It's all of that and more.
Right?
We went out and spoke to a number of people of the homeless community with the mayor a couple weeks ago. And during my 17 years at the newspaper, we've done numerous stories and features on the homeless population, talking to them, videoed them, biographies. A couple weeks ago, we went out and we spoke to, I think we saw 19 people on the street. It was 3 in the morning, and we spoke to, I think, about a half dozen. And of those half dozen, 4 of the 6 mentioned housing and rehab they wanted bad.
Yep.
Not in no particular order, 2 of which, and neither of which they can get.
Yep, exactly.
And so they're stuck.
Exactly.
So there you go.
So how does issuing them a fine solve that problem?
No, it's not the fine. It's about just moving them out of the places. I still think.
Right, but where are they supposed to go?
Well, I don't know, but they shouldn't be in a park. They're not allowed in playground right now. Are you against that? That was part of the federal law. What's the difference?
Well, the playground is places where we expect children to be.
Parks are where we expect families to be.
So what's
the difference?
There are different areas in parks that, on the river banks and different things in the bushes where people are having to survive right now.
Yes.
Do I want that to happen? No, I don't. Do I think that's appropriate? No, I don't. Do I think punishing them for being there is appropriate? I don't think it's going to solve the problem.
I think punishing is a pejorative word. I think just moving them along. Like Katie Newstater said, we're not looking to punish them with fines.
Right,
we're not looking to give them a criminal record. We're just asking them, don't be there. Now, let me ask you one question, because double back here.
Yes.
You said we need more places for people to safely use their drugs under supervision.
Yes.
Whose mandate is that? Who's responsible for doing that? The city or the health region, the health authority?
There is no mandate.
No. Who's responsible? Who's authority? Who sets those up?
So,
if we want to do it tomorrow, what governing body does it?
Anybody can.
Can the city do it?
The city can do it.
Okay.
In Vancouver, we see many community organizations do it. We see peer organizations doing it. In the interior, they're primarily, we've got one that's run by Ask Wellness, which is a community organization. We've got one that's run by Interior Health.
But do they need, Ask Wellness needs Interior Health's approval to do that?
No,
they don't.
They do not need.
Okay, so the city could do it tomorrow.
They could do it tomorrow.
Oh, good to know.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would support them to do it.
Okay, that's good to know.
One question about your job.
Yes.
How stressful is it?
Lately, very.
Yeah.
Yes.
You've been getting some idiots online being over the line with their criticism, I hear.
There's online criticism, which is nothing new as a woman on the internet. But lately, it's been people specifically phoning my work phone and emailing me at work.
Yeah, that's offside. Yeah, that's offside for sure. And a lot of those people online who criticize you, I've seen some of them, I get it too a lot. The most vile ones are the ones who hide behind cowardly pseudonyms. So I just dismiss it.
I'm able to not take it personally because they don't engage with the arguments that I am making, that I have made today.
No.
And so, if someone really wanted to have a conversation and they said, hey, you said this, I'm curious, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, opens up dialogue.
Then I would be interested to engage. But when they come right out of the gate being like, I don't agree with you saying this and I think you should go away, it's not productive.
Sometimes the best response to someone who says you're an idiot is to like the response.
Who's saying that to us again? That was
they hate that.
Tina Lang. Tina Lang said she does that.
Right. And it works. It's like a bully, right? You both thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh no, I block them straight away.
That's you're a blocker. Okay, that's good.
Well, thank you. You came in here and you stood in for some tough questions. We appreciate that very much, and that's too bad to hear about that stress, and hopefully it goes away a little bit for you, and all that online stuff is garbage.
It's good that we have a medical health officer based in Kamloops, because you're the first one, I think.
Not historically first, but the first in a long
time.
Yes.
That's okay. Good stuff.
Have a safe ride home.
Thank you.
Kaleigh Gnoato, were you advocating for anything? You probably were advocating in grade 10. You were boycotting Expo in '86, so you probably did advocate for things in high school.
Well, I was politically involved when I was a teenager, and then I got introduced to the cannabis, and I got a little bit less involved with advocating for anything. So I was advocating for more smoke breaks.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Regardless of what you think about this issue, I think you have to respect this student, grade 10, for reaching out to us. And
yeah.
She was very well spoken in this interview. Her concern is she loves gymnastics, and it's part of high school programming right now. There's a vote coming up at the AGM. BC School Sports is voting on whether or not to nix it. There's been a motion from the Thompson-Okanagan zone. They have their concerns, which we'll hear about later. So there's that side of it, but we're going to give Kaleigh a chance now to talk about her side of it.
So why did you contact me?
I contacted you because BC School Sports is trying to scrap the gymnastics program, which will affect a lot of athletes throughout the province, and we're trying to do something about it.
How did you hear that was going to happen?
One of my teammates posted a petition on her Instagram story, and I clicked on it and read all about it, and I shared it, and that's sort of how we all found out. And yeah, we all kind of jumped into action in different ways, trying to get it to be resolved and not canceled.
And you just mentioned it's going to, make you upset, I imagine.
Yeah.
How would this affect you?
It would take out multiple competitions for me during the season. And it would also, one of our teams is dedicated just to high schools, and we have athletes who only compete in the high school's program. So some of my friends would have to find other programs at the gym. And it would just sort of ruin a sense of community with my school and some of my closest friends.
And some of that is financial too, right? Some people are just able to, what's the story there?
Yeah, some of the schools on the coast have programs that are run directly through the school, and they're set up and take down in the high school gym, which is an insane amount of work. And it's an opportunity for people who don't have the financial abilities to join a club to still be able to do the sport and participate in a competitive program, which is super important to a lot of athletes.
So in Kamloops, will there be people who are in gymnastics now who are unable to be in gymnastics, period, if this is scrapped?
No, not specifically in Kamloops. Like I said, that majority affects the coast. And I feel like some of the clubs up north in BC also, but not specifically Kamloops, thankfully.
So in Kamloops, this is more about you're losing events, you're losing opportunities to go to the high school events?
Yeah. We have our qualifiers and we have our provincials. And provincials always comes with a banquet, which is a great way for us to meet people from other clubs and meet other athletes throughout the province and build connections with them. And having that be taken away is going to ruin a sense of community throughout the province, not just Kamloops and surrounding areas. So,
yeah. So about how many events total would that take away if they get rid of the high school?
It would take away our qualifiers, which is one event, and then it would also take away provincials, which spans over 4 days between competitions and the banquet. And then it would also take away competitions. I have one coming up on Friday in Richmond. The Delta Invitational has a high school's session. So that would get taken away, as well as the Grizzly Invitational has a high school session the following weekend. So those are just ones that it would affect for me. But I'm sure that there are lots of meets that we don't attend due to distance that also have high school sessions that would be taking away for lots of other athletes around the province.
Provincials, I mean, going back to my high school days, that was a highlight for rugby. I mean, how much would it hurt to lose that?
It would be devastating. We had provincials in Vancouver this year, and it was one of the highlights of my year, being able to go down there with my closest friends and get to, represent my school and my city. And like I said, getting to meet athletes from other clubs and other schools in the province and being able to connect with people that you don't get to meet or that you wouldn't get to meet if an event like this didn't happen. So having that get taken away would be pretty upsetting.
What type of support have you received and how is the fight going?
The fight is going pretty well. Lots of my friends have shared the petition and I've been getting lots of people to sign it. We're in contact with Cindy from Synergy Gymnastics and we're writing letters that she's going to send to the BC School Sports Board about why they shouldn't cancel it, which has been a huge thing for us. And yeah, we're all sort of doing our part trying to get it to stay together.
What's the reasoning you're hearing behind why they want to cancel it?
A lot of it is financial. The other thing I heard was that the contact between people from the gyms and athletic directors is lacking, but I don't feel like that's a reason to cancel something as much as just something that individual people can improve on. Something else I heard was that it's because most of the athletes that attend are from coastal BC and like Vancouver and surrounding areas, but most of the people who live in this province live around Vancouver and in surrounding areas. So again, I feel like that's just something that you could say about any high school sports, or any teams or clubs like that. Yeah.
Okay, and with the petition, do you know how many people have signed it?
I think the last time I checked, it was at like almost 4,000. And I checked earlier today, so I don't think that number has probably changed too much.
Anything else you wanted to mention about this?
I think that schools are always trying to like get kids to be active and get the kids to be involved in extracurricular activities, and gymnastics is a huge extracurricular activity. Like our gym is always packed and there are always between like recreational and competitive. There's tons of kids who are involved in it. And I know that I have girls who are younger than me on my team that don't do high schools, that are aging into high schools, who are incredibly excited about it and can't wait to represent their future school. So I feel like having it be taken away is going to be really upsetting for a lot of future athletes who have been watching me and my teammates compete for our schools. So yeah, I think it's just important to keep another physical activity involved and being able to give the opportunity to kids who might not get an opportunity to represent their schools in other ways. So I think fighting for it is really important, and making sure that, especially because gymnastics is a female-dominated sport, and there aren't too many of those. And so fighting for that to be recognized and shared is really important to us and me.
Okay. Well, you're very well spoken. You should be proud of yourself for leading the charge no matter what happens.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay,
there you go.
Thoughts from you there?
Yeah, well, she's passionate and she loves her sport. Don't know if she's on a losing battle, but it's good that she's fighting it.
It wasn't just her that reached out to me as well. It's there's an advisory committee, a gymnastics advisory committee that advises BC school sports. They're upset with the communication or lack thereof around this whole thing. They said they were never contacted about this. They didn't know there was a motion on the table, this vote was going to happen, so there wasn't a chance to give their side of it and find a solution instead of going ahead with this vote. So there's work now being done to at least have this motion maybe tabled, or to have it voted against it. They're offering their side so that the vote doesn't go through.
Yeah, so mid-May, I think, is the meeting?
Yep.
I think, yeah.
Well, there is another side of this. I think we'll get some of that from our next two guests in Last Week, This Week. It's brought to you by McDonald's.
Man, I don't know. Where's the button that I have to push to go? Oh, here it is. Okay.
Okay, we have Annemarie Watts, Jody Vosper. Annemarie's from Valleyview. Jody, you're from Sa-Hali, the Sabres. You're the athletic director there.
Yeah.
Annemarie, you also West Zone. Can you clarify what you do for the West Zone as well?
Yeah, so the West Zone is one area of the Okanagan Valley. There's 4 athletic kind of zones. And so I'm kind of, if you want to call it, athletic director for the West Zone. So I oversee athletics, do the scheduling, busing, fields, referees, deal with all that in our West Zone.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We wanted to have you on. This is a good news story, folks. Okay, Foles just finished running hot on Carol Fenton. This is a good news story.
We were talking especially about the drug uses in parks and the bylaws. We're talking about sports
You're
now.
running hot again. You're mad again.
Let's talk about sports. Come on.
You two are winning awards. You're going to receive awards May 12th, I think, in Whistler at the AGM. Annemarie, let's start with you. This is the Honor Award.
Yeah.
This is the highest form of distinction awarded by BC School Sports.
Yep.
It's essentially a Lifetime Achievement Award. So what does it mean to you to win that?
Yeah, super surprised. I was nominated by 4 individuals from School District 73 who I've worked with throughout the years. And yeah, to be recognized for doing something I've loved to do. I've never thought of it as a job. It's been mostly volunteer. Yeah, it's pretty special. It's been overwhelming, especially with all the feedback I've been getting and messages and emails and yeah.
Anything that stands out about that feedback? Any kind of touching messages from past students or anything you want to share?
Just, yeah, parents, students from 20, 30 years ago, and sometimes I don't even recognize the names because they've married and gone on, and you know, they remember certain things. Frank Caputo actually sent me a message, and he was a West Side grad, and he remembers me wearing a Holy Cross sweatshirt to school one day because I had worked there prior to coming to West Side in '93. And he remembers how everyone gave me a hard time on that. So I don't even remember that. So just messages and emails, you know, yeah, recalling certain events and it's pretty cool.
And how long have you been doing this for now?
So I've been coaching for 35 years. 88 was my first gig in Vancouver. And then zone president around the year 2000, I did kind of my first 4 or 5 year stint. And then Joanne Loader took it over for about 5 years, and then I went back into it. So I think 17 years in total as zone president. And then working with the Okanagan presidents as part of the Okanagan Valley. And then I was on the board of directors for BC School Sport as well for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's switch to Jody for a second here. You are going to receive the Citation of Excellence Award Athletic Director.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm pretty honored to be recognized same time as Annemarie. I've been in teaching for 20 years, and right out the get-go, we've been competing against each other coaching volleyball. So I'm working hand in hand for the West Zone. It's my 15th year as an athletic director this year. For me, just knowing that my colleagues nominated me was a big honor. And like Annemarie, I just love what I'm doing, being involved in high school sports, and to be recognized for something like that is pretty cool.
Have you received anything like this before?
No, I haven't been recognized before, no.
Well, what's it like, how much have things changed over the years with your job? I mean, is it getting tougher? Is the average student getting tougher to deal with, or no?
I would say no. I think the students these days have more that's in their world that they're dealing with. Athletics is very helpful for them, and to be able to see the growth of students through high school and be connected to their school through athletics is pretty cool to be involved with. And yeah, things are different, but they're the same as when I started. Yeah.
How often are you kind of reminded of why you got into it in the first place? I imagine there's some tougher days, and then maybe some times that are like, oh, this is why I do this.
Yeah, I know one day during basketball season, one night I was driving home after doing crowd control in a game, senior game. I'm like, why am I doing this? Because it's a lot of hours that you are away from your family. My family's been super supportive of my time through it. So that's a frustrating night for sure, but there's so many times where you just, conversations with students that are being successful or they've had struggles and they've persevered, and just to be a part of that and to see them develop to young adults and have them going on whatever they're pursuing and see that success is pretty cool to be a part of.
I think some of my kids are graduated now, but they were in sports and in music. And I remember the best teachers, or the teachers that most impressed me, were the ones who just were so into it. And they're there at 7 in the morning and they're there at 9 at night. And I wondered, where was their life, right? You know, because of the hours you guys work. And I know that there was a couple of kids who went to school with my kids, and I talked to their parents, and they were going through a really tough time. They were going sort of off the rails, if you know what I mean. They were doing some, dubious things, but they joined the basketball team, and they basically said this kind of saved them. Have you come across kids who, if it weren't for athletics, they might have went the wrong way, and have you seen that actual materialize?
I think we all have.
Yeah.
We all have those individuals on our teams, and not all of them stick with it, unfortunately, right? And those are kind of the tougher stories, but the ones that do, and that's a big reason too why we're still involved, seeing all the success stories and stuff. So
how hard is the other part of that? I mean, like a doctor losing a patient, like you see a kid who has so much potential and they're trying to stick with it, but maybe they have so many pressures at home or parental struggles, and they go the wrong way. I mean, how hard is it to see that stuff happen?
That's definitely tough. At Sa-Hali, we've had a couple students that were part of school teams and then went down a different path, and maybe we've dealt with several overdoses of former students in the last 5-6 years. Myself personally had a couple key teachers that I would have gone down a different path, and that's part of the reason why I'm in it. And just you can see that building of self-confidence, how important that is through athletics. It helps you in life. So yeah, it's definitely difficult when you see students that just go a different direction for various reasons.
Mike, do you have any questions?
Just a statement, I think. I live a couple doors down from Valleyview School, and I love listening to all the cheers and stuff that goes on in the fields, and when we guys force the kids to run. Force? that was my high school experience.
Yeah, exactly.
My philosophy's different on that.
But I think it adds a lot to the neighborhood, and I think it's really great. So congratulations on the awards. It's a great thing.
Anything you wanted to add, Annemarie? I'm going to ask you guys about a different topic now, but did you come prepared with anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I just, you asked me in the email some stories that stood out. Yeah. And, when I was first notified that I was getting this award, they asked me to go through pictures and stuff and send in, some history. And so I've got this massive box at home, 35 years of, I've thrown everything in. I even have some scrap books that have never been completed. That'll be a retirement project. But as I'm going through all that, a couple of stories stood out for me. And one involved Dylan Armstrong, which way back, he won, bronze at the 208 Olympics. And he went through Westside, and him and Shane Nemi, both amazing men, have done really well on the world stage. But I remember taking Dylan Armstrong to the Okanagan track and field meet, so the qualifier for provincials, and he was in grade 10, I think, at the time. And we show up at the hammer throw field, and it was this elementary field, and it wasn't large, but they had done hammer throw there for 20 plus years. And Dylan kind of comes to me and says, I think the field's too short. Well, let's go talk to the judges. Yeah. So we go talk to this one judge. Nope, we've done this forever. No one's ever thrown past this point. It will be fine. So Dylan and I are kind of, well, let's just give it a go.
Yeah.
So his first hammer throw through the wall of the school.
Oh, no way.
A hole this size. So, you know, the memories that I'm left with were never memories of how we did.
Yeah.
Even in volleyball, and I've been to provincials. Jody and I have coached against each other many times and had some amazing battles. But I'm always, you know, when I was going through all the history, I was left with, you know, how you felt when you went there, how the connections were with the kids, like those accomplishments, not how we did at all. Yeah.
I remember the Sa-Hali provincial win volleyball. Was it 2015?
2016.
That was a really cool story. And a lot of those girls went on to do big things for post-secondary.
Yeah.
Katie Ludwig and
Yes, right.
Kate McCorkle.
And
Sawyer Hoggett.
Sawyer Hoggett.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just share a story? Sure. When I put on, like, most of my favorite memories are from coaching, but as an athletic director, I can't remember the year that the school district was proposing to restructure, and Sa-Hali would lose its senior teams, and basically there'd just be one school for our senior students, and Valleyview, South Cam, and ourselves would all go into one. And it used to be that way, but just speaking to keep our school 8 to 12, and then finding out that we were going to be able to keep that was a big moment for me as an athletic director, and the importance of that for our school and for Valleyview and South Cam.
When was that?
I can't remember when they proposed. It's when Brock
became a middle school.
Became a middle school. Yeah. So yeah, that 10 years ago at least. But that was a big moment for. I felt really proud that we stood up and kept our school the way it was.
Right on. Well, speaking of losing teams, that goes into our next subject here. One of your Valleyview students, Kaleigh Gnoato, reached out to me, grade 10. I was so impressed by her advocating, because there is a motion I've dug into a little bit here. It's the Thompson Okanagan Zone, I believe, that's put forth this motion to essentially nix gymnastics program, high school programming starting next year. The advisory board, Gymnastics Advisory Board, is upset about this. They feel like there wasn't communication, and they are going to fight this. There's a vote, I believe it's supposed to be at the AGM weekend.
Which is soon.
Which is coming up, May 15th. And one of your students contacted me, and I interviewed her, and we're going to hear from her soon. Do you know anything about this?
Yeah, it was the Okanagan Valley. We have our AGM every June.
Yeah.
So last year in June, there was a discussion amongst all athletic directors. So every school is represented at the AGM, and there are almost close to 60 schools. And so a discussion happened regarding gymnastics and the disconnect with gymnastics in the high schools. There wasn't a single high school in the Okanagan, so 60 schools, that have gymnastics run in their building. It is completely club-based. And so after lengthy discussion, we put it to a vote to delist gymnastics from BC school sports.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there has been some concern about a lack of communication, and that they would have appreciated knowing more about it, and would have fought that. And I think a lot of students, especially on the coast, are going to be affected. I think there's, especially on the coast, are going to be affected by what could happen here. Especially with there's concern about the female side of things, because I think there's 85% or so of gymnasts are females, and they're concerned about that. And Kaleigh's concerned about losing provincials. It's just such a great, as you both know from going to those events, and the qualifiers for provincials. I mean, aren't those kind of concerns that some students might have?
Oh, absolutely. Students, you know, would have that concern. Kind of where we're coming from is that because it hasn't been run in high schools in 20, 30 years, and in the Okanagan, there's a real disconnect with high schools. A lot of times athletic directors don't know who the students are. You know, they go to the meets, they're not wearing our school jerseys. We, as ADs, know the value of gymnastics, and it's not that we're eliminating gymnastics altogether. We're eliminating just the high school competition. that falls under the umbrella of BC School Sports. They can definitely still have high school competitions, kind of like what rodeo does. They do it kind of and organize it themselves. It just has not, the communication with ADs and that disconnect just hasn't been smooth in the last 10, 20 years, right?
What about the aspect of, you're right, I think the majority of these athletes, they are with clubs. I mean, it's operated through like the KGTC, but there are some students who can't afford that. And the high school avenue is their only avenue. And there aren't that many in Kamloops. I think there's only probably 10 high school gymnasts total that have run through the high school program. But I think on the coast it's much more significant of a number. Is that a concern as well? The fact that some of these kids are not going to be able to do it, period, because they can't do it through high schools.
Yeah, so we in our zone are not seeing any just kids that come through high school. There's zero.
Yeah.
They're 100% club-based. And so that motion came from our zone because this is what we're seeing. So this is why there is a legislative assembly. There are 3 members per zone that will be at the AGM. And so we want to hear from other zones. Is this an anomaly in the Okanagan?
Yeah.
Right? And are other zones well represented with having it coach through the high school? So those are discussions that will happen right next week.
I appreciate your side of that. I think they would argue that on the coast there are probably a lot more people that would be affected by it here, but I can't speak for them for sure. And it's good that you're willing or BC School Sports are at least willing to hear them out. I think that there will be discussion, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's still in the curriculum of PE and gym, right? You still do gymnastics? No?
No.
No.
We had issues with, I think people got injured, and we haven't had equipment in our schools for years.
Do you still do square dancing?
We haven't since the pandemic, but
we used to be part of I remember when I was
grade 8. Yeah, you danced with the grade 12s. It was the best thing ever.
It was the greatest thing in the world.
It's my favorite thing to teach.
We've added a little hip hop and a few other things in there, but
well, I'm getting old.
But I don't think there's a school in our zone. I've taught 32 years. I've not taught gymnastics in any of the schools I've been at. It's just the liability piece. Yeah.
Badminton tournaments were the absolute best.
Yes. Dodgeball. I can't do
dodgeball.
that anymore.
Can you do dodgeball still?
No, apparently not.
We have nice softballs, not volleyballs. They were deadly.
They were deadly. Some of the
dodgeball is alive and well.
That's great to hear. That's excellent.
Yes,
excellent. Great
with the nice softball that everyone loves. So,
good.
Yeah.
Whistler, do you get to have some fun? Do they put you up in a hotel?
Yeah. Now Jody's part of the Legislative Assembly.
Yeah. I'm on the assembly, so I was going to be there for that weekend.
Are you guys going to rent the Champagne Lounge like
well, I'm not a drinker, so but I will enjoy the night.
He's going to give me his drink ticket.
With my wife is going to be there, so that's pretty cool because she's been supporting me through this whole time. So
great trip.
A lot of volunteer hours, and so much credit should go to all. I'm glad we get to acknowledge at least a couple of you for all the extracurricular hours that go into it, because it's a ton.
It is.
Thank you for being here. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thoughts on the show?
It's a good show. Eclectic, diverse, a lot of different topics, important topics.
What did you make of your conversation with Carol Fenton?
Well, it was good that she came on, and she spoke to Michael Potestio for a story last week in her story paper, I think 2 weeks ago. This issue's been going on forever. I understand what she's saying. I don't agree with some of it. I think a lot of people are just... It's hard. She's an expert in medical health, so I defer to her expertise. I'm just looking at what's happening in Portland with decriminalization over a year, 39% increase in overdose deaths. You look at Alberta. They've gone the other way. They've ramped up rehab and detox, and in the last 11 months, the overdose deaths have dropped by 47%. So I think there's probably, like she says in her Venn diagram, there's somewhere in the middle is the answer. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm not a glass half empty guy. I'm a realist, and I think no matter what they do, it's going to be a long time. Well after we're long gone, where this will have anything will be improved. It's a tough world out there right now.
Do you have a more glass half full look than old doom and gloom here?
I really enjoyed your conversation, but I think that also we really need to have that component of once you've gone through getting help, whether it's recovery or addiction help kind of a thing.
Post help.
How do you stay? You need to get employment.
Dr. Fenton made that really good point, is that, if you don't have that, sorry for interrupting, but she made that point, which I thought was very well, is that
absolutely
it's well and good to get people into rehab, into detox, into that, but if there's nothing afterwards and they trip and fall, it's dangerous.
And I think, I've got people that I know that are in that loop and stuck and have been for 40 years.
A family member.
So, it's like, I think that's probably where I'm going to start to think about is how we can provide solutions to help people on that end, the recovery end.
They call it the continuum of care, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty much with you, though. It's just like, is it ever going to get better?
I don't think so. Not unless we change as a society. We're a very greedy, capitalistic society, and that's how we live. And it all boils down from that, and that's just the truth.
Let's end on that positive note. But before we do, let's thank our sponsors, because we can't do the show without them. Gord's Appliance and Mattress Center. They service what they sell. They have cookies when you go in. They have fantastic beds right now as well. And the mattresses from Sa-Hali are always the cushiest in town by far.
We should go there one day and have a contest who can fall asleep the fastest at Gord's.
That's a good idea. Maybe that can replace gymnastics in high school sports.
You could use those Sa-Hali mattresses for the pads.
Gone
are the liabilities.
For the gymnastic.
Crawl up that little rope thing.
Gord's could solve the gymnastics problem with the liability. That's right. Yes, good idea. Yeah.
Also, thanks to Volkswagen of Kamloops. The Turtle Race is coming up this weekend, the VW Turtle River Race.
Isn't it May 12th?
I got my tickets.
Is it
May 12th?
May 10th?
May 10th?
Look, it's coming up soon. It's coming up very soon.
It's a sponsor. We don't know what it is. I think it's what's the date today?
It hasn't happened yet.
3rd?
It's this weekend. It's the 7th, isn't it?
7th, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
the 7th.
right.
There you go.
Don't ever doubt me. I know exactly what I'm talking
about. Is that a Sunday or Saturday? Sunday.
It's the 7th. Whatever the 7th is.
That's a Sunday, right?
12 to 3, Riverside Park.
Are you going to be there, Greg?
Greg's going to be there riding one of the turtles, I think.
Oh, totally.
And also McDonald's, McHappy Day. It's on May 10th, and we thank them as well.
Absolutely, best coffee in town.
Yeah.
For Chris.
Fantastic lattes.
Only $2, maybe?
This is $1.92, but you know what? In 4 months, I get a senior's coffee.
Whoa.
Very exciting time in the Folds' household.
People start bringing you out so they can get the advantage of that.
Yeah. So
What's age is that?
Huh? 55.
55?
That's right.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, can't wait. I'm going to save myself $1 every time I go in there. I could maybe buy a River Song guitar after a couple years. Yeah. There you go.
For Chris, for Greg the engineer, for Bennett, for Magic Mike and Bill, I'm Marty. We'll see you last week.
Last week.